Hi, welcome to the Light of Deception. Today I'm going to continue in the series of the many isms leading to deception. I'm going to recap for you. So at the beginning of the series, I started talking about world transformation, global transformation, and how that includes the church, talking about social justice, the social gospel, talking about being a social change agent, and then Christian socialism. And I brought that all together about talking about how the churches have bought into this new narrative under this social agenda. So they're into social community centers instead of churches, doing something out there in the world and greening the world, bringing the world together in this holding hands in this interfaith dialogue, portions of the social gospel, linking hands across denominations and somehow healing our world. And so they are part of this, I would say that, and they probably don't even know, some of them would know that they're coming on board with globalism, so they would be part of the Agenda 21, which is now the Agenda 2030 agenda, and how, seminary schools have bought into the global curriculum. Definitely is in the public school system. Starting on September 18th of 2018, we signed up for this global curriculum, so it's rampant. So brainwashing, so if you're talking about billionaires bringing in some kind of agenda into the seminary schools, they're not Christians. So you have interfaith and maybe mysticism type of religions, atheism, I hate to say it, but maybe some kind of secret society agenda going on here. So after I left there, we defined what socialism is, what is Marxism, what is communism, what are the Georgia Guidestones, then jumped over to mysticism, seeing how that ties into the Georgia Guidestones as well. And we started off talking about occultism, what is an ism, what is mysticism, what is meditation. Then we talked about ancient Gnosticism and Gnosticism, and then we went into the world religions that are tied into mysticism, like in Buddhism, we talked about that, Hinduism, we defined all these terms. We talked about Kabbalah within Judaism. We talked about Catholicism, we talked about Mormonism and transhumanism. Those are linked together. And then after that, we talked about ecumenism and with that, universalism. Then we talked about pantheism and panentheism, and the difference between the two of those. We talked about New Ageism, Enlightenism, and then we bridged back over with paganism. And then I talked about back under politicalisms, talking about fascism and totalitarianism. Then talked about globalism and nationalism, defining those terms and then comparing and contrasting those. Now we'll be going back up to the top of the list under politicalisms, and we'll be talking about capitalism, and then looking at, again, at socialism, and then communitarianism. We'll be touching base on what is progressivism. I think it's important to talk about how this kind of curriculum has got inside the churches. And then we'll look at the environmental agenda, so environmentalism, what a huge part it plays in this global world religion, global economics, global education, global world system, and how it's coming together in this new world order in such a rapid rate. You see it everywhere. And then we'll close, and always as we do, and we'll talk about the literal Word of God, biblicalism, standing on that and not wavering. So today we're going to go with capitalism. So here's our defining our terms. Capitalism, an economic and political system in which a country, trade, and industry are controlled by private owners for profit rather than by the state. An era of free market capitalism. Okay, here we go. Capitalism is an economic system which is a capital goods are owned by private individuals or businesses. The production of goods and services is based on supply and demand in the general market, rather than through central planning. The purest form of capitalism is free market, or laissez-faire capitalism, in which private individuals are completely unrestrained in determining where to invest, what to produce or sell, and at which price to exchange goods and services, operating without checks or controls. All modern countries practicing a mix of capitalism or capitalist system of some sort that includes government, regulations or of business and ownership of select industries. Okay, next. Okay, these are just kind of going to put a little bit more. It's going to kind of repeat itself a little bit, but I wanted to give you just a slight bit more. There's much more to read here on the site, so go ahead and scroll down. Under the light assumption, under it's going to say political isms or mystic isms or Christian isms. You'll find them there. Capitalism is an economic and social system in which participants privately own the means of production called capital. Free market competition, not a central government or regulating body, dictates production's levels and prices. Okay, so that's pretty much going to sum it up. There's more going on here, but we're going to go down to socialism again. Okay, definition of socialism: the political and economic theory of social organization which advocates that the means of production, distribution, and exchange should be owned and regulated by the community as a whole. Okay. Again, a little bit more. Policies and practices based on a political and economic theory of socialism. Okay, this kind of talks about, in Marxism's theory, a transitional social state between the overthrow of capitalism and the realization of communism. There you go. Socialism is a populist economic and political system based on political ownership of the means of production, those machinery, tools, and factories used to produce goods that aim to directly satisfy human needs. Communism and socialism are umbrella terms referring to two left-wing schools of economic thought. Both oppose capitalism, but socialism predates the Communist Manifesto and in 1848 pamphlets by Karl Marx. It talks about that by a few decades. In the purely socialist system, all legal productions and distributions decisions are made by the government, and individuals rely on the state for everything from food to health care. The government determines the output and the pricing levels of these goods and services. Okay, so now we're going to be talking about communitarianism, just so you kind of know the midway point here. So we're going to go to communitarianism. I'll define that term for you. You'll hear all these things thrown around, and sometimes you won't know what the breakdown is and what the difference is between these things. So communitarianism, okay, of a relating to social organizations in small, cooperative, particularly collectivist communities. Okay, this is going to be communitarianism. I'll say that again. Of or related to social organizations in small, cooperative, particularly collectivist communities. Okay, we're going to go down. Communitarianism. Social and political philosophy that emphasizes the importance of community in a functioning and political life, in the analysis and evaluation of political institutions, and in understanding human identity and well-being. It arose in the 1980s as a critique to two prominent philosophical schools: contemporary liberalism, which seeks to protect and enhance personal autonomy and individual rights in part through the activity of government, and libertarianism, a form of liberalism, sometimes called classic liberalism, that aims to protect individual rights, especially the rights to liberty and property, through strict limits on governmental power. So there is that too. Let's see, maybe we're just going to do a little tiny bit more. There are strong communitarian elements in many modern and historical policies, political and religious belief systems, i.e. in the Hebrew Bible Old Testament and in the Christian New Testament, Acts 4:32. Now the whole group of those who believe were of one heart and soul, and no one claimed private ownership of any possessions, but everything they owned was held in common. In the early Islamic concept of Sharia and Confucianism and Roman Catholic social thought. Interesting. And then it says in a modern conservatism, just seeing if there's anything else to add here, and in a social democracy, especially Fabianism and communitarian ideas have also played a significant role in public life through their incorporation into the electoral platform and policies of the Western political leaders of the late 20th and early 21st centuries, including British Prime Minister Tony Blair and U.S. President Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. Varieties of communitarianism. Okay, there's so much more to read, but I cannot keep going, so please go on the site and you can read the rest. We're going to be talking about liberalism, seeing the difference there between liberalism and communitarianism. Let's see what we got here. The quality or state of being liberal. 2, a often capitalized a movement in Protestantism, emphasizing intellectual liberty and the spiritual and ethical content of Christianity. B, a theory in economics emphasizing individual freedoms from restraint and usually based on free competition, the self-regulated market, and the gold standard. C, a political philosophy based on beliefs in progress, the essential goodness of the human race, and the autonomy of the individual, and standing for the protection of political and civil liberties, specifically such as philosophy that consider government as a crucial instrument for social equating, such as those involved race, gender, and class. D, capitalized, the principle of a policy of a liberal party. Okay, let's see. Liberalism had always claimed to stand for greatest social good. So that's here we go again, talking about social. So that was just to explain an example of liberalism in a sentence. Okay, liberalism, political doctrine that takes protecting and enhancing the freedom of the individual by the central problem of politics. Liberals typically believe that government is necessary to protect individuals from being harmed by others, but they also recognize that government itself can pose a threat to liberty, as the revolutionary American volunteer Thomas Paine expressed in its Common Sense. Government is best as a necessary evil. Laws, judges, and police are needed to secure the individual life and liberty, but their coercive power may also be turned against him. The problem then is to devise a system that gives government the power necessary to protect individual liberties, but also prevent those who govern from abusing the power. The public is compounded when one asks whether it is all that government can or should do on behalf of the individual freedom. Some liberals, that's so-called classical liberals are libertarians, answer that it is. Since the late 19th century, however, most liberals have insisted that the powers of government can promote as well as protect the freedoms of the individual. According to the modern liberalism, the chief task of government is to remove obstacles that prevent individuals from living freely, from fully realizing their potential. Such obstacles include poverty, diseases, discriminations, and ignorance. This disagreement among liberals over whether government should promote individual freedoms rather than merely protect it is reflected to some extent in the different prevailing conceptions of liberalism in the United States and Europe since the late 20th century. In the United States, liberalism is associated with the welfare state policies of the New Deal program of the Democrats administration of President Franklin D. Roosevelt, whereas in Europe it is more commonly associated with a commitment to limit government and laissez-faire economic policies. Well, there you go. Just seeing if there's anything else there. This article discusses the political foundations and history of liberalism from the 17th century to the present. For coverage of classic and contemporary philosophical liberalism, see political philosophy. So there's more here. So much more to read about here. So next we're going to be talking about progressivism, so how that's come into the church and has caused a great deal of this kind of thinking coming from more of a liberalistic concept. Maybe a little bit of communitarianism, socialism, Marxism, communism ideas that are coming into our churches. And the youth is just seeped in all this. There is even a part here that's talking about communitarianism and the Pope. So I would highly recommend, because it was talking about the Bible here a little bit, to go ahead and read through this. And then you're even under communitarianism, you're going to be seeing aspects of contemporary liberalism, and so it's worth a read to go through here and see how the Roman Catholic Church is tied into communitarianism, more of a liberalistic mind for you. It seems like a more conservative stand on liberalism, but if the Roman Catholic Church is involved, and you see that, it's kind of interesting to see Barack Obama's name here, right? And Bill Clinton and those kind of things. So as though communitarianism or liberation theology sounds a little more conservative, it still leans towards the left. And maybe partially towards the right if you're talking about libertarianism, because it's classic liberalism. So it's kind of good to just kind of see a bigger picture of what's going on here. So next we're going to be talking about progressivism. This was from October 8th, 2019. Progressivism in the United States, political and social reform movement that brought major change to American politics and government during the first 2 decades of the 20th century. Progressive reform made the first comprehensive effort within American content. We're going to look a little bit more at this because I need to break this down a little bit more than that. So, okay, the 20th century, let's see, decades in the 20th century. Progressive reform made a first comprehensive, this is part of it, effort within the American context to address the problems that arose with the emergence of the modern urban and industrial society. The U.S. population nearly doubled between 1870 and 1900s. Urbanization and immigration increased at a rapid rate and were accompanied by a shift from local small-scale manufacturing and commerce and large-scale factory production, and technological breakthrough and frenzied searches for new markets and sources for capital causes unprecedented economic growth. From 1863 to 1899, manufacturing production rose by more than 800%, but the dynamic growth also generated profound economic and social ills that challenged the decentralization or decentralized form of Republican government that characterized the United States. Okay, so let's see if there's anything else to see about progressivism. Progressivism, okay, is the support of an advocacy of social reform. As a philosophy is based on the ideas of progress, which assert that advancement in science, technology, economics, development, and social organizations are vital to the importance of the human condition. Okay, so this mindset of progressivism. Let's see if there's anything else to think about here. So when you're looking at this, you can look under progressivism in the philosophy and policies. There's more break the meanings of it. Let me see. The meaning of progressivism has varied over time and from different perspectives. Progressivism became highly significant during the Age of Enlightenment in Europe. Out of the belief that Europe was demonstrating the societies could progress in civility from uncivilized conditions to civilized through strengthening the basis of empirical knowledge as a foundation of society. Figures of the Enlightenment believed that progress had universal application to all societies and that these ideas would spread across the world from Europe. Wow. In the modern era, a movement that identifies as a progressive is a social and political movement that aims to represent the interest of ordinary people through political change and the support of the government actions. In the 20th century, those who identified as progressive may do so for a variety of reasons. For example, they favor public policies that reduce the harmful effects of economic equality as well as systematic discrimination, to advocate for environmental causes policies, as well as for social safety nets and rights of work, to oppose the negative externalities inflicted on the environment and society by monopolies and corporate influence on the democratic process. The unified theme is to call attention to the negative impact of current situations or ways of doing things, and to advocate for progress. That is, for positive change as different by any of several standards. Such expansion of the democracy, increase social and economic equality, improve well-being of the population, etc. The contemporary common policies concepts by progressivism in the culture of the Western world emerge from the vast social changes brought about by industrialization in the Western world in the late 19th centuries. Progressivism in the early 20th century, as well as now, take the view that progress is being stifled by the vast economic inequality between the rich and the poor. Minimally regulated, laissez-faire capitalism with multiplistic corporations and interest of and often violate conflicts between workers and capitalists, thus claiming that measures were needed to address this problem. Early 20th century progressivism was also tied to eugenics and the temperance movement, both of which were promoted in the name of public health and were promoted as initiatives towards the goal. Contemporary progressivism promotes public policies that they believe will lead to positive social change. There you go. Did you hear all of that was involved in there? So it's not only just political, it's mystical. So it's a form of an enlightenment. It's about socialism. It's about ending capitalism and overthrowing capitalism. It's more of a liberal theology. So it's leaning towards the left, and so we're having there's some that are trying to come to the middle. So why don't we just come in the middle and choose to get along? We won't be one side, we won't be the other, and we'll just be here. So you really need to pick a side. So are you going to be leaning towards the progressive Christianity, a liberalistic Christianity, a more enlightened Christianity, a more you can use so many terms, but it's saying socialism, Marxism. You can't believe that Marxism is in the church. It surely is. Leading to communism, right? To world domination, but in the guise of equal opportunities across the races. We're all going to join hands in a global utopia. Things are going to be more peaceful, more green. We're going to love our world. We're going to be more mystical. We're going to reach a heightened level of truth. We're going to know that we're all part of all things, that the earth has a story to tell us, that we need to link arms with the trees and the plants, and we need to all become one with the animals. I mean, those kind of things, right? You're worshiping the earth. Mother Earth, which is Gaia, just like they have Earth Days and different things like that. So many people are part of that, thinking, well, we're just going to go ahead and be a part of all these things because we need our Earth to be more and more healthy, the climate to be better. We need to come along and just everybody just get along, right? We don't live in a world where everybody gets along. We don't get along. We don't have a one world religion yet, but we're becoming to have one. And it's going to be interesting how the churches will turn against each other. So Christianity, there'll be a form of Christianity, and then there'll be a traditional fundamentalist, chapter by chapter, verse by verse, standing on the word of God, never moving. God is the same yesterday, today, and always. Right? He says what he means what he said. The whole Bible is true. And then you're going to have all this other stuff. Let's make room. Let's just make room for all the things that God calls an abomination. Let's link hands and find common ground to meet together as world religions so we can come along and just heal our climate. Yeah, let's spend all this money on making things. What are we going to do? Solar powered. Let's just make things where the wind and the solar is going to. So do you know how much money it costs and what goes into the production of these and the materials that go into making these things? And what happens when there's no wind and there's no sun? You know, I'm just thinking about all those things. And I keep bringing up all kinds of different things. You know, they've been trying so hard to get world domination and one world order for such a long time. And they always need a common thread for everybody to come together. They need their religions for sure. They need education. They need everybody in society to come along. A global currency definitely is going to work as well. So here we are, standing at the door of a decision, right? So are you going to stand? Or are you going to join the world system? Are you going to be a persecuted Christian that's standing on the Word of God and you're going to be on a fence? you're going to be called a racist and a bigot and everything else that can come because they have to put the racist beat them against each other, right? So one movement against the other movement, one ideology against another ideology, and you're going to bring all these sides and movements against each other, right? And then you're going to find some kind of middle ground is the answer. So we'll meet in the middle. We'll have that house of one where we all go in and worship. So we'll worship in the middle in some kind of commonality, right? And then we'll go off to our rooms and worship our God or many gods or those kind of things. And all done on purpose. So like I said, if you're reading Rules for Radicals by Sal Alinsky, it tells you how to throw over society. If you look at Karl Marx in the Communist Manifesto, what was his agenda? These are things, these people are not even with us anymore, and they wrote books that are still here today, that are still influencing society, right? So keep your eyes open, stand back, take a really good look at what's going on in the world. Remember that it's all done on purpose. And so what I'm telling you when I'm defining all these terms is it's not my opinion. It's written here in definition for you. And you can tell how they're linking all this mysticism, politicalism, religious isms, and they're bringing it all together in this common ground under community and unity and globalism. So I hope all these teachings help you to stay out of the light of deception. Thank you. Until next time.